A historic turn. Austria joins NATO. The Kremlin is in a panic. Europe is changing before our eyes. Neutrality is over. Austria is building up its army. Putin is feeling the heat.
Putin has repeatedly criticized NATO expansion, viewing it as a threat to Russia's security, and then launched a full-scale offensive against Ukraine. Europe understands that the only thing to expect from the Kremlin dictator is war, so it is planning its strategy in advance. The Austrian authorities are ready to discuss the possibility of abandoning the country's neutral status and joining NATO due to the threat from the Kremlin. Austria's foreign minister stated that she is open to public debates about Austria joining NATO, but neither the parliament nor Austria as a whole currently supports joining the alliance.
One thing is clear: neutrality by itself does not protect us. What truly protects Austria in an increasingly unstable international environment and with a more aggressive Russia is investment in our own defense capabilities as well as in partnerships. Overall, I am very open to starting a public discussion about Austria's future in the field of security and defense. Although there is currently no majority in parliament or among the population in favor of joining NATO, such a discussion could be very useful.
Piet believes that Vienna cannot just sit back and wait, because the world has changed.
We cannot simply lean back in our chairs and say, if we don't bother anyone, no one will bother us. That would be naive. We are doing everything possible to support the common European security and defense policy financially, through military participation and politically. Thus, Austria's neutrality has changed significantly since joining the EU in 1995.
Austria declared its neutrality back in 1955 after the withdrawal of Allied troops. Austria's neutral status was enshrined in the country's constitution. Therefore, to change this status, it would be necessary to amend the constitution. But it is possible. Neutral Austria could consider joining NATO if Slovakia leaves the North Atlantic Alliance, something the pro-Russian Prime Minister Fico has already started talking about.
If Slovakia were to leave NATO, it would worsen the security situation for Austria. This would undoubtedly spark a major discussion about Austria's NATO membership and the possibility of joining NATO. One of the reasons people say Austria is not currently under immediate threat is because it is surrounded by NATO member countries and is therefore relatively safe.
Austria is almost completely surrounded by NATO member countries, and in the event of an attack from the east, the country expects that Russia would first have to go through Slovakia, which is in NATO. Despite its neutrality, Austria cooperates with NATO through the Partnership for Peace program. But it is not Russia that wants peace, and if Putin were truly interested in peace, he would have started negotiations for a ceasefire.
US President Trump handed over Crimea and several eastern regions of Ukraine to Putin, so to speak, on a silver platter. In addition, he ruled out the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO. And what does Putin do? He continues to wage a war of annihilation across the entire country.
The Russian Foreign Ministry has repeatedly accused Austria of violating its neutrality.
The Austrian leadership can insist to itself and to the world as much as it wants on the inviolability of the country's permanent neutrality, which in the past truly earned it the reputation of a respected international mediator in resolving peaceful crises. But today, it is clear to any reasonable politician that the concepts of Austrian neutrality are incompatible.
The last time was on the 24th of July, when the spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, stated that Western weapons were being transported to Ukraine through Austrian territory.
By the Austrian authorities, both in letter and in spirit of their own constitution, the constitutional law on permanent neutrality of 1955, from the standpoint of common sense, combining a genuinely not merely nominal neutral status with the implementation of military transit on such a scale in any form is simply impossible. But that's from the perspective of common sense, and there seems to be less and less of it left in Western countries. Austrian political circles, apparently, are guided by something other than common sense. They manipulate things in their own interests, and in reality act against the interests of the Austrian people, and not only violating the norms of constitutional law, but also disregarding the opinion of their own country's population. After all, more than 75% of citizens there support maintaining neutrality in its classic sense.
A similar opinion was expressed by the ambassador of the Russian Federation in Vienna, Dmitry Lyubinsky. He stated that Austria's neutrality is becoming a political fiction due to the country's participation in the pan-European air defense system Sky Shield.
The Austrian authorities claim that participation in the Sky Shield program guarantees security for the Austrian people and does not violate Austria's neutrality. From our point of view, this is a rather questionable way to protect sovereignty when Austria's military neutrality becomes a political fiction. And of course, we have drawn our own conclusions.
The journalist who interviewed Mein Reisinger called neutrality the sacred cow of Austrians and a part of the identity of Austria's residents.
But we need to take our own security into our own hands, and Austria will make its contribution within the framework of neutrality. We will also increase our defense spending and thus contribute to European security.
Just a year ago, 4 neutral countries in Europe declared that they wanted to move closer to NATO through joint exercises and information sharing because of Russia's aggression. And they stated that this initiative has already begun to be implemented. Several high-level meetings were scheduled. At the same time, it was stated that Austria joining NATO is out of the question. Trump rules out the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO. He suggested, echoing Kremlin rhetoric, that Ukraine's intentions to join the alliance could have been the reason for the Russian invasion.
At the summit in Washington, we decided that Ukraine's path to NATO is irreversible. But Ukraine was never promised that NATO membership would be part of a peace agreement.
Would Russia have acted this way toward Ukraine if an agreement had been signed earlier? Currently, NATO has 32 member countries. Some countries did not wait for an attack but reconsidered their NATO accession policy immediately after Putin's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. These are Finland and Sweden. They joined this defense alliance, which clearly makes them more protected from Putin's invasion.
Shock! Putin bombs Minsk. Lukashenko on the brink of war. The Kremlin goes all in. A Russian ship in EU waters. A bloody attack in Zaporizhzhia. 17 dead in the colony on the anniversary of Olenivka. Salsk in flames. The Kremlin in panic. All the shocking details coming up in the report.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
On the third anniversary of the military terrorist attack in Olenivka, Russian occupiers committed an equally horrific crime, carrying out an airstrike on the Belarus correctional colony in the Zaporizhzhia region during the night of the 28th of July to 29. As a result of this war crime, 17 people were killed and 83 more were injured. Civilian infrastructure was also destroyed and damaged.
Strikes on correctional colonies are officially considered war crimes. They are prohibited under those international documents that have been ratified, including by the Russian Federation. In my opinion, this was a deliberate strike on the correctional colony, timed to coincide with the anniversary of the Olenivka terrorist attack. We can say that this was a demonstrative episode of war crimes by the Russian Federation, and it was primarily addressed to Ukraine's Western partners.
There were also strikes on Russia that night. On the night of the 29th of July, the city of Salsk in the Rostov region was attacked by drones. Local residents reported a large fire near the railway infrastructure.
As a result, this effectively eliminates the possibility of redeploying personnel, heavy armored vehicles, and fuel and lubricants by rail transport.
Unknown drones were detected in temporarily occupied Donetsk. Local social media channels report dozens of UAVs. It is possible that a railway junction was attacked. A substation on the outskirts of Makivka was also on fire. This year, 2 out of the 5 divisions that the Russian dictator has dreamed of creating since December 2022 will see the light of day. According to Putin, this will significantly increase the strike power and combat capabilities of the fleet, which are already being targeted by GUR fighters. They showed footage of an FPV drone being used in open sea. But what the Russian fleet is really capable of is provoking incidents on the territory of other countries. The main headquarters of Estonia's defense forces stated that a Russian border guard ship entered the country's territorial waters without permission and remained there for 35 minutes. The incident occurred on the 26th of July.
The point is that, according to Estonia's State Border Act, a foreign military vessel is allowed to pass through the country's territorial waters if it is making an innocent passage. But there is one condition. To do so, it is necessary to notify Estonia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs 48 hours in advance. The Russian border guard ship did not do this, which indicates a demonstrative attempt by the Russian Federation to violate the territorial waters of this state.
The Russian occupation army does not cease its attempts to capture the cities of Pokrovsk and Mirnorod. However, they are objectively slowing down after encountering a worthy response from the Ukrainian armed forces.
The occupiers are trying to use the so-called small quadrants tactic, meaning flanking maneuvers against the positions of the Ukrainian defense forces with the threat of creating an operational encirclement. The goal is to force the Ukrainian defense forces units out of their positions in Pokrovsk and accordingly in Mirnorod and Drushkivka. Currently, Russian troops have intensified their offensive along the flanks. First and foremost, this refers to the penetration of Russian troops between Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka, with the main direction of movement toward Mirnorod.
Things are not calm even in Putin-friendly Belarus. There, a drone was shot down right over the capital Minsk. After the incident, the Belarusian regime announced that it is taking measures to strengthen control over its airspace. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un has volunteered to help Putin continue the war. The North Korean dictator may send additional troops to Russia as early as August this year. In exchange for strengthening the Russian army, North Korea is receiving satellite launch and missile guidance technologies from Moscow.
This has never happened before. Putin has cancelled the parade. Are the sailors left without a celebration? Oh, what happened? The reason will surprise you. Shocking! Putin has resurrected and made a public appearance. Watch all the details right now.
Heartfelt congratulations to all Russian naval servicemen on this significant Navy Day.
For the first time in Russia since 2017, the main Navy parade for Navy Day was held. Ships arrived from other regions and even from other countries. But here's the problem: for the first time in 2025, the Grand Parade was unexpectedly cancelled.
Every year on Navy Day, which is traditionally celebrated on the last Sunday of July, there were always impressive ships proudly displayed on the Neva River, and it was always a truly grand and festive celebration. Actually, I can't truthfully say that it was some kind of truly super-duper grand parade, but it was most definitely a significant celebration. There were numerous flags waving proudly. There was an impressive parade where the esteemed commander would meticulously inspect all the ships and so on and so forth. So for the historic city of St. Petersburg, it was always a very special and cherished holiday.
Of course, there were also congratulations from the Kremlin dictator. He even explained the reason for the cancellation.
It's a truly beautiful and significant holiday, but I think you certainly agree with me that under the current challenging circumstances, it is absolutely right and proper to celebrate this important holiday in a dedicated combat working environment. Everyone must diligently stay at their assigned posts.
So why is that? After all, Russia started its full-scale war against Ukraine back in 2022. But for some reason, everyone stays at their posts only started in 2025.
As the Kremlin likes to do, they simply took this holiday and restructured it, reformatting it for Putin. Previously, it was just a naval holiday for the city and for sailors, but now Putin has taken it over. Well, besides, St. Petersburg is, of course, an important city for Putin because he was born there. That's basically why they decided to reformat it.
Peskov also announced the reason for the cancellation. Supposedly, it's all for security reasons. But the parade was not held either in St. Petersburg or in other cities. Vladivostok, Kaliningrad, and the occupied Sevastopol.
Let's get back to the real reason. And the real reason is that on Sunday morning, for the first time, residents of St. Petersburg received SMS warnings about a drone attack in the Leningrad region. This was the first time, and frankly, it's obvious to anyone that the real reason for the cancellation is precisely the drone attack. Because, as we've discussed many times before, more than anything else in the world, Putin is afraid of dying.
However, on the 27th of July, Putin did arrive in St. Petersburg to inspect the Navy's July Storm operational exercises, which took place from the 23rd of July to 27th in the waters of the Arctic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Baltic Sea, and the Caspian Sea.
The main goal of the exercises is to thoroughly practice the actions of fleet units and formations in repelling a seaborne attack under conditions as close to combat as possible. the coordination of ship crews, naval aviation combat teams, and coastal missile complexes is being tested. Our key objective is to reliably ensure Russia's security.
That's interesting, but we need to ensure security from whom exactly?
When Leonid Brezhnev, General Secretary of the CPSU Central Committee, signed the Helsinki Accords on Security, that was the creation of a security system in Europe. And in fact, Putin destroyed all of that by attacking Ukraine. And of course, now, as he parades around Europe with his tanks, submarines, and so on, he tells us that Russia needs to be protected from someone. Of course it does. Russia needs to be isolated from Putin, and then there will be security.
Well, of course. And what would it be without a festival of vanity? Navy Day in Russia could not go by without the country's chief sailor. Putin was awarded the Medal for Loyalty to the Navy.
For being awarded the Medal of the Maritime Board of the Russian Federation for loyalty to the Russian Navy, for his significant personal contribution to the development of the Russian Navy, strengthening the country's maritime power and maintaining strategic and regional stability in the world's oceans. The Medal for loyalty to the Russian Navy is awarded to the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
The medal was presented by Putin's aide and the chairman of the Maritime Board. Most likely, it was Putin himself who approved it. After all, who else would be worthy of such an honor if not him?
For Putin, well, it's the same old story of imitation, yes. So when they canceled Navy Day, not the day itself, but the parade on Navy Day, they're still afraid to cancel the day itself. For now, basically, the very parade they created for themselves, and now they're forced to cancel it themselves. And now they have to put on some kind of imitation. But apparently, to complete the picture of imitation, they had to pin some medals on him as the sailor's greatest friend.
And so that people wouldn't be too upset about the cancellation of such a grand parade, Putin even went out among the public.
Personally, I truly believe that this entire story is completely and utterly staged, appearing to be entirely fabricated. And the audience was specially trained and gathered in a particular way. And the fact that we don't see any security in the television footage just means that somewhere far away, out of our sight, there's a cordon, and only the audience that was vetted was allowed near Putin. That's how I see it.
The parade was cancelled, the medal was awarded, people watched. Everything else doesn't matter. Navy Day was a success. Well, of course, by Kremlin standards.